Every year, Americans spend more than $40 billion on detox products, powders, pills, detoxes, juice fasts, activated charcoal cocktails sold in sleek bottles at prices that should make you pause. And here is what almost no one selling those products wants you to know. Your body has already built the most sophisticated detoxification system that has ever existed. It runs continuously, in layers, without asking you for anything except the right food. The ancient world knew this. Every major civilization, with a developed food culture, Hebrew, Egyptian, Greek, Chinese, Ayurvedic, centered their restorative practices not around extraction or purging, but around nourishment, around feeding the system that was already working. Today we are counting down 13 of the most powerful cleansing foods that have stood at the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science. Foods that support your liver's filtration work, your kidneys' fluid processing, your gut's elimination pathways, and your lymphatic system's quiet cellular housekeeping, not by replacing those systems, but by giving them exactly what they have always needed. Pay close attention to number 1 on this list. Most people have walked past it on a produce shelf for decades without understanding what it contains or what it switches on inside their cells. And when we reach number 7, I am going to tell you a story from the desert. A story of 3 days without water, of a man left for dead, and of what Scripture records that he was given when he was found. It is not just poetry. It is a description of cellular restoration that modern biochemistry is only now beginning to fully explain. Number 13. Cucumber. The Book of Numbers, Chapter 11, records one of the most remarkable food complaints in the entire Hebrew Bible. The Israelites, wandering in the wilderness, cry out not for bread or meat. First they cry for the cucumbers they knew in Egypt. The Hebrew word is kishhuiam, and its specific mention alongside leeks, onions, and garlic in a list of foods remembered with longing suggests these were not luxury items but daily staples. Foods so woven into the rhythms of Egyptian life that their absence felt like deprivation. This is striking when you understand what Egyptian physicians actually understood about cucumber. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical texts in the world, dating to roughly 1,550 BCE, includes cucumber among foods prescribed to support urinary flow and ease heat-related illness. Simultaneously, classical Chinese texts reference cucumber as a cooling food used to support the body's fluid balance during summer heat. An Ayurvedic tradition classified it among the foods that soothe what practitioners called pitta, the heat excess condition associated with inflammation and disrupted digestion. 3 cultures, no contact between them. The same functional conclusion. Modern nutritional science explains why. Cucumber is approximately 96% water by weight. But that water is not the same as water from a tap. It arrives in the cell wrapped with potassium, which supports sodium balance and fluid regulation across tissues, and with small amounts of silica, a mineral compound that connective tissue researchers have studied for its role in supporting collagen matrix integrity in the gut lining. Research on high water content vegetables consistently shows that people who consume them regularly maintain better hydration status than those relying on fluid intake alone. Because electrolyte-bound water in whole food is absorbed and retained more efficiently than plain water. Your kidneys filter roughly 180 liters of blood per day. That process is entirely dependent on adequate fluid. Without it, everything downstream on this list is working at reduced capacity. Slice cucumber into cold water with a sprig of fresh mint for an all-day drink that hydrates without effort. Eat the skin. The silica concentrates there. Or blend cucumber into a cold green soup with parsley and lemon. It is quiet. It is foundational. And it has been prescribed by physicians for 3,500 years for reasons that science is still unpacking. The Israelites knew what they had lost. The Egyptians had understood what cucumber did long before anyone had a word for electrolytes. Number 12. Watermelon. Watermelon's origin traces to the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa, where wild varieties have been found growing for millennia. But it was in Egypt that it was first cultivated and first revered. Seeds of watermelon have been recovered from pharaonic tombs dating to approximately 3,500 BCE, placed with the dead specifically because the fruit was believed to sustain and restore in the afterlife the same way it did in life. That is not a metaphor. It is a statement about how seriously ancient Egyptians took watermelon's restorative properties. The Romans brought it north through Mediterranean trade. Chinese cultivation records mention it by the 10th century CE. The same fruit, independently valued across every culture that encountered it specifically for its cooling, hydrating, and what ancient physicians described as its blood-moving properties. Modern biochemistry now has specific language for what they were observing. Watermelon contains citrulline, an amino acid your body converts into arginine, which your vascular endothelium uses to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide relaxes blood vessel walls and improves circulation, meaning your blood reaches your kidneys and liver more efficiently, delivering the oxygen and nutrients those organs require to sustain their filtering work. A clinical study published in the American Journal of Hypertension measured significant reductions in blood pressure and arterial stiffness in adults who consumed watermelon extract, with researchers attributing the effect largely to citrulline's impact on vascular function. Watermelon is also one of the richest dietary sources of lycopene, the red carotenoid studied for its capacity to protect tissue from oxidative stress, including kidney tissue, which accumulates oxidative damage with age and poor diet. Eat watermelon cold, very fresh. At the beginning of a meal, the ancient Egyptian practice of eating it before a feast was likely an intuitive form of preloading fluid and supporting digestion. Add a very small pinch of good sea salt. It amplifies the sweetness and helps your body retain the fluid you just consumed. Freeze chunks for a hot weather snack. The citrulline concentrates slightly more in the white rind, just beneath the green skin if you juice it. Include the rind. Pharaohs brought watermelon into the tomb. They understood it was worth keeping close. Modern vascular research is now explaining exactly why. Number 11. Parsley. It is one of the most consistent misuses of a genuinely powerful plant in modern food culture. The sprig of parsley pushed to the edge of the plate. Untouched. Discarded. Hippocrates listed parsley as a medicinal herb in his pharmacological writings in the 4th century BCE. Traditional European herbalists from the medieval period through the 19th century prescribed parsley tea, specifically as a tonic for the kidneys, a practice documented across England, Germany, France, and the Eastern Mediterranean independently, before any of them could explain the flavonoid chemistry behind it. That chemistry is now well characterized. Parsley is extraordinarily rich in apigenin and luteolin, two flavonoids studied for their diuretic-like effects, their antioxidant activity, and their capacity to reduce inflammation in kidney tissue. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology examined parsley's effect on urinary output and found measurable increases consistent with what traditional healers had been observing for centuries. Parsley is also one of the most concentrated common food sources of vitamin K, delivering more than a full daily requirement in a small handful. It delivers meaningful vitamin C, supporting glutathione production, and chlorophyll, the same green pigment that preliminary research suggests may bind to certain compounds in the digestive tract before they are absorbed, reducing the oxidative burden reaching the liver. But here is something almost no one talks about. The seed of the parsley plant contains apiole, a compound so concentrated in its diuretic and uterine-stimulating properties that traditional herbalists historically used parsley seed oil medicinally and specifically cautioned against its use during pregnancy. The leaf used as a food is safe and beneficial in normal quantities. The seed is another matter entirely, a reminder that dosage is chemistry, and that natural does not mean without pharmacological effect. Stop treating parsley as decoration. Blend a full handful into a morning smoothie with lemon and cucumber. Steep fresh leaves in just boiled water for 3 minutes. Strain and drink it warm. Chop it generously over finished dishes as you would an herb. The medieval apothecaries who prescribed parsley for kidney support were not guessing. They had centuries of careful observation behind them. Number 10. Beets. The Talmud mentions beets specifically in a list of foods associated with auspicious health, consumed at Rosh Hashanah. But beets appear in medical contexts far older than that in ancient Mesopotamian texts. In classical Greek writing, and in Roman agricultural manuals, where Pliny the Elder described them as supportive of digestion and blood quality. Eastern European and Russian food culture built borscht, the long-simmered beet stew, into its restorative canon, specifically as a food for recovery. Eaten after illness, after cold, after depletion. What unites all of these traditions is an instinct about something the color of beets seems to signal. This root is doing something with blood and tissue that other vegetables are not. Modern biochemistry identifies betalains, the deep red-purple pigments unique to beets and a handful of other plants, as compounds with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that research suggests may specifically support liver cell function and reduce oxidative stress in liver tissue. Beets also contain betaine, a methyl donor your liver uses in a process called methylation, which is essential for breaking down fats within the liver and supporting phase 2 detoxification, the stage where your liver chemically neutralizes processed compounds before they are cleared from your body. Without adequate betaine, this phase slows, and compounds that should be eliminated can recirculate. Here is a nuance almost entirely absent from popular beet content. Cooked beets and raw beets behave differently. Cooking reduces betalain content, but makes the betaine more accessible. Raw beets retain more betalains, but are harder on digestion. Fermenting beets, as in the traditional Eastern European kvass, a lacto-fermented beet drink, preserves both while adding beneficial probiotic bacteria. The traditional preparation was likely optimal in ways those cultures understood through practice rather than biochemistry. Roast beets whole, unpeeled, at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 60 minutes until completely tender. Then slip the skins off. Eat them warm with a drizzle of good olive oil and a pinch of salt. Or make a small glass of raw beet juice with a thumb of ginger to temper the earthiness. The deep red color is not incidental. It is betalain doing its work. The same reason ancient healers who did not have the word antioxidant reached for this root first. Number 9. Artichoke. The ancient Greeks cultivated artichokes as a luxury food, but their physicians recommended them specifically to people suffering from liver heaviness and poor digestion after rich meals, a use documented in Dioscorides de Materia Medica in the 1st century CE. What the Greeks were observing, though they framed it in humoral terms, is a real physiological process. Artichokes stimulate bile production and flow. Bile is the fluid your liver manufactures to emulsify dietary fat, but it also serves as a primary elimination channel. Your liver packages processed waste products into bile, which carries them into the small intestine, from which they pass out of the body. When bile flow is sluggish, that elimination channel backs up, cynarin. The compound most closely studied for this effect was isolated from artichoke leaf in the 20th century. Multiple randomized controlled trials on artichoke leaf extract have demonstrated measurable improvements in bile secretion and significant reductions in symptoms of dyspepsia, the catch-all term for indigestion, bloating, and upper abdominal discomfort. A study in the journal Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics reported that artichoke leaf extract reduced dyspepsia symptoms by approximately 40% in participants with functional indigestion. Results the researchers considered clinically meaningful. Artichoke is also one of the richest food sources of inulin, a prebiotic fiber that specifically feeds bifidobacterium and lactobacillus species in the large intestine. Bacteria whose metabolites support a healthy gut lining and reduced systemic inflammation. Here's the preparation nuance. The bitter compounds responsible for the bile-stimulating effect concentrate in the outer leaves, and the leaf itself, not the heart. which is what most canned preparations contain. The tender heart is delicious. But the whole steamed artichoke is a different and more medicinally functional food. Steam a whole artichoke for 35 to 40 minutes until a leaf pulls away easily. Eat it leaf by leaf, pulling the fleshy base of each leaf through your teeth. Do not add butter. A good lemon and olive oil dip lets the bitter compounds work rather than coating them. Dioscorides prescribed this for liver heaviness nearly 2,000 years ago. What he was describing, without knowing the chemistry, was the artichoke's capacity to move bile. The clinical trials have now confirmed exactly what he saw. Number 8. Garlic. Few foods in the entire history of human medicine have been as consistently and independently recognized as garlic. It appears in the Ebers Papyrus in Egypt. Prescribed as a tonic for workers building the pyramids, specifically to sustain strength and prevent illness under extreme physical stress. It is mentioned in the Talmud as a food that supports the 5 things it was said to do for the body, warming it, illuminating the face, increasing strength, killing parasites, and supporting desire. Hippocrates prescribed it for respiratory conditions and intestinal disorders. The ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia included it as a warming, protective food. Roman legions carried it on campaigns as a daily ration. No trade routes connected all of these cultures' conclusions. They reached them independently. What they were observing is now understood to be allicin, the sulfur compound released when garlic is crushed or chopped, as the enzyme alliinase converts the stable precursor alliin into its active form. Allicin and its downstream metabolites are directly involved in supporting your liver's phase 2 detoxification enzymes, specifically the glutathione S-transferase family, which your liver depends on to neutralize a wide range of potentially harmful compounds before clearing them. Multiple human clinical studies have examined garlic supplementation in people with early non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and found measurable improvements in liver enzyme markers. With researchers cautioning that study populations and doses varied and that further research is needed, garlic also acts as a prebiotic, selectively feeding lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species associated with a healthy gut barrier and reduced inflammatory signaling, meaning it supports cleansing from the gut end as well as the liver end simultaneously. The critical preparation: detail, crush or chop garlic, and let it sit for a minimum of 10 minutes at room temperature before applying any heat. This window allows the alliinase reaction to complete and stabilizes the allicin so that it survives cooking far better than if you add raw garlic directly to a hot pan. High heat destroys alliinase immediately, meaning garlic added whole to a roasting pan is delivering flavor and some nutrients, but not the same sulfur compounds that drove every ancient civilization to reach for it. The Talmudic physicians who wrote about garlic's 5 virtues were observing outcomes over generations. The alliinase reaction is why. Number 7. Figs. This is the story I promised you at the beginning. 2 Kings. Chapter 20. Hezekiah, king of Judah, is dying. The scripture is specific. He has a severe illness. A shechin, a word often translated as a boil or infected wound, though some biblical scholars read it as a systemic infection or deep inflammatory condition. The prophet Isaiah comes to him and delivers what sounds like a death sentence. Then he returns with a message from God and something else. Isaiah instructs the household: take a cake of figs, a poultice made of pressed figs, and lay it on the wound. Within 3 days, Scripture records, Hezekiah rose and went to the temple. Now, that isn't just a miracle story, though in the context of faith it is read that way. That is also a clinical description. A fig poultice applied to an infected wound in an era before antibiotics, and a recovery that followed within 72 hours. Here is what the biochemistry tells us. Figs contain compounds including ficane, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down proteins, including the fibrin and necrotic tissue that accumulate in infected wounds and prevent healing. Traditional wound care in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cultures used fig preparations topically for exactly this purpose: to debride wounds, to clear the material, preventing granulation tissue from forming. Before any understanding of enzyme chemistry, before germ theory, they had observed that fig poultice drew wounds toward closure. Modern research has also examined fig leaf extracts for their effects on blood glucose regulation and liver enzyme activity, with preliminary results suggesting anti-inflammatory and hepatoprotective properties, though human clinical evidence remains limited and researchers have called for larger trials. But figs deliver something else, which is why they matter on a cleansing list. They are exceptionally rich in soluble and insoluble fiber, one of the highest fiber concentrations of any common fruit when eaten dried, supporting regular elimination. The most direct route your body has for clearing processed waste. They also contain unique polyphenols, including rutin and chlorogenic acid, compounds with antioxidant activity studied for their effects on vascular health and blood sugar regulation. The preparation detail: almost no one mentions dried figs soaked overnight in cool water, not hot, not boiled, just cold soaked for 8 to 12 hours. Release their fiber gently without the concentrated sugar spike that eating dried figs quickly can cause. 2 figs soaked this way and eaten first thing in the morning support gentle elimination before any other food is introduced. Hezekiah was given figs in the most desperate moment of his life. 3 days later, he walked. The ancient physicians who reached for figs in crisis were not reaching randomly. They were reaching for proteolytic enzymes, soluble fiber, and anti-inflammatory polyphenols. They simply did not have those words. Number 6. Turmeric. Turmeric appears in the Charaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine, composed roughly 2,000 years ago. Described as a blood-purifying herb, a digestive tonic, and a wound-healing agent. Sanskrit texts refer to it as Haridra, the golden one. Chinese medicine adopted it independently under the name Jianghuang, also gold, also associated with liver and digestive support. Arab physicians brought it into medieval European medicine. It traveled everywhere it was traded, and everywhere it was used. Physicians described the same cluster of properties supporting liver function, reducing internal heat and inflammation, moving bile. 3 traditions. 1 root. The same functional observation. Modern research identified curcumin in the 19th century and has spent the past several decades attempting to understand precisely how it does what those physicians were observing. Curcumin has been shown in laboratory and animal studies to support the activity of both phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes, the full liver processing pathway, and to stimulate bile secretion. Confirming the classical observation. It activates the NRF2 pathway, the same genetic switch we associate with broccoli sprouts sulforaphane, increasing the production of your body's own antioxidant and detoxification enzymes. Here is the challenge that most turmeric content ignores. Curcumin is poorly absorbed. In its natural state, it passes largely through your digestive tract without reaching the blood in meaningful concentrations. The research breakthrough came when scientists studied traditional South Asian cooking and noticed that turmeric and black pepper appear together in virtually every classic preparation, not for flavor pairing alone, but because piperine, the active compound in black pepper, increases curcumin's bioavailability by up to 2,000%. That is not a rounding error. Traditional cooks who combined these ingredients for thousands of years before bioavailability was a word in any scientific paper had solved a pharmacokinetics problem through accumulated observation. Combine a 1/4 teaspoon of ground turmeric with a small pinch of freshly ground black pepper. A teaspoon of good olive oil or coconut oil fat further enhances absorption in warm milk or a grain-based broth. Warm but not boiling curcumin begins to degrade above 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the preparation the Ayurvedic tradition called haldi doodh, golden milk, made exactly this way for precisely the absorption reasons. Researchers have now confirmed, make it at night. When your liver does much of its metabolic processing, 4,000 years of physicians reaching for the same golden root, the molecular pharmacology is finally explaining why. Number 5. Broccoli sprouts. This requires a small but important distinction that most wellness content blurs over. Broccoli sprouts are not young broccoli. They are the seedling, harvested 3 to 5 days after germination, at the precise stage when the plant is biochemically doing something entirely different from the mature vegetable. In the 1990s, researchers at Johns Hopkins University identified that broccoli sprouts contained sulforaphane, or more precisely, its precursor, glucoraphanin, at concentrations 10 to 100 times higher than mature broccoli, depending on the variety and growing conditions. This discovery, published in Science in 1997, triggered a research wave that continues today. Sulforaphane is not itself an antioxidant. It is something more sophisticated. It is a signal molecule that activates the ERF2 genetic pathway, which in turn switches on the production of hundreds of your body's own protective enzymes, glutathione S transferase, NADPH quinone oxidoreductase, and others enzymes that your cells use to neutralize, process, and clear compounds that would otherwise accumulate as oxidative damage. The distinction matters because dietary antioxidants are consumed. They neutralize one free radical and are used up. But sulforaphane activates the machinery that produces antioxidants continuously, for hours after it has been metabolized. Clinical studies measuring specific detoxification enzyme metabolites in urine after broccoli sprout consumption have confirmed that this upregulation is occurring at the cellular level, not just in a lab dish, but in human participants. Here is the preparation detail that determines whether you actually get this benefit to the enzyme myrosinase, which converts glucoraphanin into sulforaphane, is destroyed by heat. Cooking broccoli sprouts, steaming. Sautéing. Adding them hot soup renders the conversion largely inert. Raw is non-negotiable for this mechanism, but chewing thoroughly is also essential, because physical destruction of the plant cells is what releases the myrosinase to contact the glucoraphanin in the first place. Eat them raw. Chew them well. Add them to sandwiches, salads, and smoothies at the very end. After heat is done, you can grow them in a jar on your counter for approximately 90 cents worth of seeds. 3 to 5 days of twice-daily rinsing produces a jar of the most sulforaphane-concentrated food available to you. The ancient world did not have access to this form. The science that identified what it contains and how it works is less than 30 years old. This is a case where modern research has found something the ancient world did not know. Number 4. Ginger. The Mishnah, the compiled oral law of the Jewish tradition codified in the 2nd century CE, discusses ginger in the context of what may be carried into the Sabbath, a detail that tells us ginger was in regular domestic use in ancient Jewish households. The Talmud discusses ginger's warming and digestive properties. It appears in Chinese medical texts as early as 400 BCE. The Sushruta Samhita, one of Ayurveda's foundational surgical texts, lists it as a digestive aid and tonic. Arab physicians included it in their pharmacopoeia. The Romans imported it at great expense along the spice routes. No food that appeared in the medical texts of this many unconnected civilizations earned that position by coincidence. Modern gastroenterology has provided specific mechanisms. Gingerols and shogaols, the primary active compounds in ginger, with shogaols being the more concentrated form present in dried ginger, have been shown in clinical trials to significantly accelerate gastric emptying, the rate at which your stomach moves its contents into the small intestine. A 2008 study published in the European Journal of Gastroenterology and Hepatology found that participants who consumed ginger had measurably faster gastric emptying compared to placebo, with researchers noting this could have meaningful implications for people with functional digestive slowness. This matters for cleansing, because slow gastric emptying allows food to ferment in the stomach and small intestine, contributing to bloating, discomfort, and the kind of digestive stagnation that makes elimination pathways sluggish. Ginger also contains peridol, a compound less commonly discussed in wellness content, which research has studied for its anti-inflammatory effects on the gut lining, and zingerone, formed when ginger is cooked, which has shown antioxidant activity in laboratory studies comparable to butylated hydroxytoluene, the synthetic antioxidant used in food preservation. Fresh ginger and dried ginger are different preparations with different compound profiles. Fresh ginger is higher in gingerols and more effective for nausea and gastric emptying. Dried ginger concentrates shogaols and is more potent for anti-inflammatory effects. Grate approximately 1 inch of fresh ginger root into just boiled water, not rolling boiling water, which drives off volatile compounds. Steep for 5 minutes covered, and drink it warm between meals. The ancient physicians, who carried ginger on every trade route, were moving the most validated digestive compound in the history of botanical medicine. The clinical gastroenterology research has confirmed what every civilization that encountered it already knew. Number 3. Flaxseed and chia. Flaxseed appears in biblical cultivation records. The Book of Joshua mentions Rahab hiding the Israelite spies under stalks of flax drying on the rooftop, a scene that establishes flax as a common agricultural crop in Canaan around 1400 BCE. Egyptian linen, which wrapped the dead in linen burial cloths, came from flax. The plant was so central to ancient Near Eastern life that it was simultaneously a food, a textile, and a medicinal resource. Traditional Northern European medicine used ground flaxseed in poultices for inflammation and internally for constipation, a use documented across multiple pharmacopoeia traditions. Chia, meanwhile, was a sacred staple of the Aztec civilization, one of the 4 foundational crops alongside corn, beans, and amaranth. The word chia derives from the Nahuatl word for strength. Chian and Aztec warriors were reported to sustain long marches on small amounts of it mixed with water. When Cortés arrived in Mesoamerica, he found chia so central to Aztec religious and economic life that he banned its cultivation as a way of disrupting indigenous culture. That chia has returned to global supermarkets in the 21st century is, among other things, a story of cultural persistence. Both seeds function through a similar and direct mechanism. When flaxseed and chia contact liquid, they absorb many times their weight in water and expand into a gel. This gel matrix moves through your digestive tract, supporting regular, comfortable elimination, your gut's most direct channel for clearing processed waste. The fiber also serves as a prebiotic for bifidobacterium and short-chain fatty acid-producing bacteria in the large intestine, whose metabolites strengthen the intestinal lining against permeability and reduce the systemic inflammatory signaling that places ongoing burden on the liver and kidneys. Flaxseed has an additional mechanism that separates it from chia. It is the richest common food source of plant lignans, polyphenol compounds that your gut bacteria metabolize into enterolignans, which have been studied for their role in healthy estrogen metabolism. Since estrogens and other hormones are cleared through the liver as part of its ongoing detoxification workload, flaxseed's support of hormonal processing is a functionally distinct contribution. The critical preparation note for flaxseed: the seed coat is essentially impermeable. Whole flax seeds pass through the digestive tract largely undigested, delivering minimal nutritional benefit. Grind them fresh in a small coffee grinder. Store ground flax in the refrigerator in an airtight container, and use within 2 weeks. The omega-3 fatty acids oxidize quickly once ground and exposed to air. 1 tablespoon stirred into oatmeal, smoothies, or yogurt first thing in the morning, with plenty of additional fluid. For chia, soak 2 tablespoons in roughly 3/4 cup of water or unsweetened almond milk for at least 20 minutes or overnight in the refrigerator until the gel matrix is fully formed. The seeds work best and most comfortably when fully hydrated before you consume them, rather than swelling inside the digestive tract. The Aztecs carried chia across empires. Ancient Egyptians wrapped their dead in the fiber of the flax plant. These seeds sustained civilizations not because of marketing, but because they worked. Number 2. Lemon. Close ancestor of the lemon, holds a place in Jewish ritual practice in the festival of Sukkot. Its fragrance associated with virtue, and its use dating back thousands of years in the region. The lemon itself spread westward from northeastern India through Persia and into the Mediterranean world, appearing in Arab agricultural texts of the 10th century, cultivated in Genoa by the 15th century, and carried by Portuguese traders around Africa to the rest of the world. In virtually every culinary tradition that adopted it, lemon was associated with cleansing, with waking digestion, and with supporting what traditional practitioners called liver heat. The biochemistry explains the morning ritual specifically. Your liver performs much of its phase 2 detoxification processing during the night, when it is not managing the acute demands of digestion. By morning, the liver's demand for glutathione, the primary molecule it uses in phase 2 to neutralize and prepare compounds for clearance, is at its highest. Glutathione synthesis requires cysteine, glycine, and glutamate. But it also requires adequate vitamin C to drive the enzyme that completes the synthesis pathway. Half a lemon squeezed into warm water, not cold, not boiling. Approximately 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit provides a concentrated dose of vitamin C at the moment your liver most needs it. The warm water itself gently stimulates peristalsis, the wave-like muscle contractions that move material through the digestive tract, supporting the gut's elimination role from the first moment of the day. Lemon citric acid may also help prevent certain types of kidney stone formation by binding calcium in urine before it can crystallize, a benefit documented in urological research, and particularly relevant for people with a history of calcium oxalate stones. Here is what almost no one discusses. Heat degrades vitamin C rapidly. Water above 140 degrees Fahrenheit begins destroying ascorbic acid content meaningfully. The traditional instruction to squeeze lemon into warm, not boiling water is not just about palatability. It is the temperature threshold that preserves the compound responsible for the glutathione support effect. Traditional Mediterranean practitioners who specified warm water were not guessing. They were preserving the medicine. Squeeze half a fresh lemon into 8 ounces of water between 100 and 110 degrees, the temperature that feels pleasantly warm but does not sting the hand, and drink it before any food, coffee, or other liquid. 2,000 years of morning ritual. Modern glutathione biochemistry. Same instruction. Number 1. Olive oil. There is no food in the biblical tradition that carries more weight than olive oil. Not metaphorically. Literally the specific physical, ritual, and economic weight assigned to olive oil throughout the Hebrew Bible is without parallel in any other food substance. It is the oil used to anoint the tabernacle, its furniture, and the priests who served in it, described in Exodus chapter 30 as a holy anointing oil. It burns in the menorah, the sacred lamp whose light was never allowed to go out. It is among the 7 species listed in Deuteronomy chapter 8 as the defining abundance of the promised land. It is used to anoint kings at their coronation. It is poured over Jacob's stone pillar at Bethel after his dream of the ladder reaching heaven. It is the currency of temple tribute and agricultural wealth throughout the entire ancient Near Eastern world. This is not incidental. Oil pressed from olives was the most labor-intensive and valuable agricultural product of the ancient Mediterranean. But it was not valued only for its caloric richness or its utility as fuel. Ancient physicians, Greek, Roman, Jewish, Egyptian associated olive oil, specifically with the liver, with digestion, and with what they called the body's vital energy. Hippocrates recommended it for abdominal disorders and for supporting liver function. The Roman physician Galen wrote about its warming and nutritive properties in the context of digestive health. Arab physicians of the medieval period called it the universal medicine. Three traditions. No contact between them. The same organ. The same functional observation. Modern nutritional biochemistry has identified why. Extra virgin olive oil, cold-pressed and unrefined, contains oleuropein, a phenolic compound concentrated in the olive itself and in the oil extracted at low temperature. Oleuropein and its metabolites have been studied in laboratory and animal models for their capacity to support liver cell function, reduce hepatic lipid accumulation, and activate NRF2, the same pathway that broccoli sprouts sulforaphane and turmeric's curcumin engage, increasing the production of your body's own antioxidant and detoxification enzymes. A growing body of research has examined oleuropein's anti-inflammatory effects on liver tissue specifically, with results that researchers have described as warranting continued clinical investigation. But here is the compound that has attracted the most recent scientific attention: oleocanthal, found in fresh, high-quality extra virgin olive oil. Oleocanthal produces a specific throat-burning sensation. When consumed, the familiar mild sting you feel at the back of the throat when tasting a good oil. This sensation, initially dismissed as an impurity, was identified in the early 2000s by researchers including Gary Beauchamp at the Monell Chemical Senses Center as the marker of oleocanthal's presence. Oleocanthal inhibits the same cyclooxygenase enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, as ibuprofen does. In the same mechanism, at meaningful concentrations, the researchers estimated that approximately 4 tablespoons of a high oleocanthal oil could produce an anti-inflammatory effect, roughly equivalent to a low dose of the pharmaceutical. They were careful about the comparison. They noted that the pharmacokinetics differ and that chronic use contexts are not equivalent, but the finding was published in Nature and has been replicated by subsequent research groups. The enzyme target is the same. The ancient physicians, who associated olive oil with the liver, were observing outcomes in populations that consumed it daily, in quantity, at every meal, for generations. They did not know about COX enzymes or NRF2 pathways. They had something the clinical trial system does not easily capture: multi-generational observation of what happened to people who use this food as a foundational daily staple. The preparation details are non-negotiable. The oleuropein, oleocanthal, and polyphenol content of olive oil degrade with heat, light, oxygen, and time. Buy extra virgin olive oil in dark glass bottles or tins. Look for a harvest date on the label, not a best by date, which can be set years forward, but a harvest date, which tells you how old the oil actually is. Fresh olive oil is peppery and slightly bitter. Old or low-quality oil tastes flat or rancid. The throat burn is oleocanthal. You want that burn. Use the oil raw, drizzled over finished dishes, whisked into dressings, eaten with bread. When you cook with it, low to medium heat, below 375 degrees Fahrenheit, preserves far more of the phenolic content than high-heat sautéing or roasting. 1 to 2 tablespoons per day as a raw daily dose, drizzled over your morning eggs, over a salad at lunch, over steamed vegetables at dinner, is how the Mediterranean populations, who showed the lowest rates of liver disease and metabolic illness in the long-term studies, actually used it. Not as a cooking fat. As a food, the tabernacle was anointed with olive oil. Kings were crowned with it. The menorah burned with it. These were not arbitrary choices in a culture that understood the symbolic weight of materials. They were using their most sacred, most functional, most carefully produced substance for the purposes that mattered most. Modern biochemistry has found oleocanthal and oleuropein. It has found the NRF2 pathway activation. It has found the COX enzyme inhibition. It is still working on fully explaining what ancient physicians observed across 4,000 years of use. The olive was not called the tree of life by coincidence, and the oil pressed from its fruit has earned every page of the attention it is receiving in current research. Here's the principle that runs through every food on this list. and it matters more than any single item we have discussed. The active compounds sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts, oleuropein in olive oil, allicin in garlic, curcumin in turmeric, betalains in beets. Gingerols in ginger do not survive extraction and industrial processing intact. The moment a food is refined, heated beyond critical thresholds, stripped of its fiber matrix, concentrated into a standardized supplement extract, or stored in clear plastic bottles under fluorescent lights, the compound that makes it functional begins to degrade. The ancient physicians who used these foods were consuming them whole, fresh, and prepared with techniques that happened to preserve their most active components, not because they understood the biochemistry, but because they were eating the food as the food, not a derivative of it. This is the pattern that the entire ancestral nutrition tradition points toward: whole, minimally processed, simply prepared, eaten consistently as a daily practice rather than consumed in crisis doses. Every civilization on this list that maintained long-term health advantages over populations without access to these foods was doing so through daily integration, not periodic intervention. There was no detox week. There was food, eaten the way food was designed to be eaten. The question worth sitting with after this video is not which of these 13 foods you should add to your routine. The deeper question is what it means that every major civilization with a developed food culture across continents, across millennia, without contact with each other, converged on the same foods, the same preparations, the same functional principles. The convergence is not coincidence. It is signal. The research is still working on fully explaining the mechanisms. The ancient world simply observed, practiced, and recorded what they found. Start there. If something in this video shifted the way you think about what is already in your kitchen, hit like and share it with someone who is looking for real answers instead of another expensive promise in a bottle. Subscribe and ring the bell. We post new videos every week at this intersection of ancestral wisdom and modern nutritional science. And leave a comment. Which of these 13 surprised you most? I read every one. This video is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet, especially if you have existing health conditions or are taking medications.